There are individuals who remain unshaken when everything around them is in turmoil. And the secret behind their composure is not what most assume. They don't shout. They don't frantically scramble for solutions. They don't feel the need to win every single debate. They simply observe. While others are consumed by the noise, they maintain a quiet presence, as if they possess knowledge from a previous life. You've likely encountered such a person, someone who carries an aura of profound stillness. No matter the pressure, they remain centered, stable, and seemingly impervious to the chaos. If you've ever questioned how this is possible, the truth is more intricate than it appears on the surface. True steadiness isn't about feeling, it is the result of feeling everything, but with profound insight. These individuals experience emotions deeply. They simply do not respond from a place of raw impulse anymore. Once you have witnessed enough, endured enough, and truly understood that anxiety fixes nothing, you cease struggling against forces you cannot command. You discover how to remain present even in the downpour. That is the mindset of the unshakable. This was not their original nature. It was a quality they cultivated. People who exhibit this constant calm were not always this way. There was a time when their minds raced. They were deeply invested, striving to manage outcomes, solve every issue, and gain universal approval. And with each attempt, they received the same message, that life does not conform to your demands, regardless of your effort. Eventually, they ceased trying to command the river's current. Instead, they learned to navigate its flow. That is the essence of real composure. Not apathy, but a deeper emotional intelligence. Psychologists might label this as self-regulation, yet that term feels clinical. It isn't about hiding your feelings or pretending all is well. It is about comprehending your emotions so thoroughly that they lose their power to dominate. The steady individual is not devoid of feeling. They are emotionally literate. They have become fluent in the dialect of their own inner world. They can experience frustration without an outburst, grief without being consumed by it, and doubt without losing their footing. Because within them, a quiet knowing exists, a whisper that says, this will also change. And that whisper is not naive hope. It is earned wisdom. They have a history that proves even the most difficult hours transform, that fear does not hasten resolution, and that serenity is found not in command, but in surrender. Many misinterpret these people. They mistake steadiness for being unfeeling, when in reality it often signals a profound capacity for empathy. They are the ones who can offer presence when others are losing theirs. They can genuinely reassure, not from a lack of concern, but from the knowledge that tumult is temporary. There is a potent strength in this quiet. It is the strength of holding back, of recognizing that not every conflict warrants your power, not every provocation requires an answer, and not every challenge justifies dread. It is the strength found in deliberately selecting peace, even when every fiber wants to engage. But let's look closer. What allows some to arrive here while others remain perpetually strained? The explanation lies within the amygdala, the brain's core for fear and emotional processing. In those who have cultivated awareness or faced significant emotional events, the amygdala finds a healthier equilibrium. It still alerts to threat, but it no longer seizes total control. The prefrontal cortex, the seat of rational thought, learns to intervene before the feeling dictates the action. In essence, steady people have conditioned their minds to insert a space between the initial feeling and their eventual reply. That space is everything. It is why, during a disagreement, they can absorb a painful comment and not instantly retaliate. It is why they can endure not knowing without rushing to fill the void. It is why, when the environment is overwhelming, they can still access their own inner voice. That pause, that intentional stillness, is where understanding resides. And here is a crucial point. This composure was rarely learned from a textbook. For many, it was earned through direct experience. Through letdowns, through setbacks, through the repeated realization that quick reactions often complicate situations. At a certain point, they grew weary of their own internal turbulence. They grew tired of escalating, of later regret, of constant explanations. They arrived at a crossroads where inner peace became more valuable than being perceived as correct. So now, when pressure mounts, they select quiet over volume. They choose to breathe deeply instead of assigning blame. They elect release rather than harbor internal resentments. And yet, this steadiness is not always effortless, because sometimes these individuals contain tempests that no one else witnesses. They appear placid, but their calm was forged in difficulty, not bestowed at birth. They have questioned themselves in solitude, felt invisible, been misinterpreted, and through it all, they uncovered a fundamental truth. Peace is not a prize for a life without trouble. It is a practice you commit to when you recognize that internal chaos no longer benefits you. That is why the consistently calm tend They are not propelled by sudden urges. They are directed by a wider lens. They do not seek external approval. They seek substance. They feel no compulsion to be right. They would rather comprehend, because at their core they have realized something most overlooked. To react to everything is to be captive to everything. The more centered you become, the more liberated you are. In psychological terms, this is response flexibility. The capacity to select your reaction rather than having it select you. That is what the steady person masters. They do not bury their emotions. They redirect them. They allow the energy to pass through without letting it dismantle them. This is why they often appear so collected during an emergency, yet may release the weight in private later. Not because they were faking, but because they grasp the importance of timing. They know there is a moment for feeling and a moment for action, a time to absorb and a time to let out. Their steadiness is not a facade. It is an internal guide that keeps them oriented regardless of external pressures. And if you pay attention, you will notice something else. While most people see disorder, they perceive underlying rhythms. While most see obstacles, they see opportunities for growth. While most see conclusions, they see new starts hidden within change. They have trained their perception to widen, to view the entire landscape instead of getting trapped in a single detail. That perspective grants them equilibrium. That is why they can face a loss and still reflect. Perhaps there is a purpose here. It is not avoidance. It is a viewpoint forged by life. The calm person you notice sitting peacefully has likely endured experiences that once fractured them. They have simply chosen not to reside within that brokenness. They have realized that when you stop attempting to manage the unmanageable, you open up a new space. And that space is where tranquility takes root. Consider that the next time you meet someone who appears unflappable, they are not disconnected from existence. They are simply rooted more deeply within it. They have ceased being thrown by each splash because they have learned to be the water itself. Their calm is not detachment. It is comprehension. It is the understanding that not every feeling requires an outward display. Not every mental narrative deserves your focus, and not every circumstance merits your vitality. Because vitality to them is precious. They invest it wisely on what builds up, rather than what breaks down. They have seen how quickly chaos can deplete a person, how conflict can shatter serenity, how minor reactions can blossom into lasting remorse. So they make different choices now. When confronted with an insult, they create a space. When misunderstood, they will clarify if it holds value, or simply disengage if it does not. When life becomes burdensome, they do not fall apart. They rely on their foundation, on patience, on their broader view. And this is what makes them compelling. It is not that they have all the answers, but that they no longer need them. They have made friends with not knowing. And in a society fixated on control, that friendship is a form of power. Because while many are waging internal wars, replaying scenes, overanalyzing, and lamenting, calm people understand that silence can communicate more than speech ever can. That not every feeling requires an audience, and that occasionally the most powerful action is a conscious non-reaction. But there is another dimension to this. Composure can also be a form of self-preservation. A defense mechanism, certainly, but a graceful one. For many, this steadiness was not a choice. It was a necessary construction for survival. They learned early that loud reactions rarely alter results, that maintaining poise was often safer, that guarding your emotional core protected you from being misread or injured. So calmness became their safeguard. Their silence became their barrier. But here's the beautiful part. Even if it started as protection, it matured into a profound capability. Because over time, that restraint evolved into keen awareness. That emotional space turned into depth. And that quiet strength became the very bedrock of their peace. This is why steady people are frequently the most self-aware. They know their sensitive points. They see their own habits. They do not require constant external stimulation to feel alive. They find solace in quiet, because quiet is not emptiness. It is lucidity. It is the sound of a person who has finally ceased fleeing from themselves. The calm ones. They often make the environment feel more measured, more secure, just by their presence. They do not enter a space demanding to be seen. They do not amplify their energy to match the commotion. Instead, they lower the commotion by their very nature. You can sense it. That quiet assurance that needs no validation. There is something deeply attractive about people who remain steady in a culture hooked on reaction. It is not because they are unemotional. It is because their emotions have evolved. Immaturity is not about age. It is about discerning what truly merits your inner peace. Calm people often recognize that disputes seldom change perspectives. That hurrying rarely accomplishes things faster. That fretting rarely stops events from occurring. So so, they release what does not help them, not from a place of indifference, but because they have finally learned the expense of investing in everything. The steady person has likely already navigated what you are currently anxious about. They have already faced the sorrow, the disappointment, the exclusion, the apprehension. They have observed that life moves forward even after periods that once felt insurmountable, and that awareness becomes their anchor. It is not that they anticipate an easy path. They have simply stopped expecting it to be just. And that shift alone dissolves a significant portion of life's turmoil. When difficulty arises, many spiral into why me? But the calm person considers, why not me? Not from a place of surrender, but from an acceptance that life happens to all. And fighting that reality only amplifies the distress. They have uncovered a truth buried in human nature. That pain, when not resisted, is merely a sensation. But pain met with resistance becomes suffering. So they stopped resisting what is. They have embraced life's flow not as passive bystanders, but as engaged participants who know when to step forward and when to remain. Because steadiness is not an action. It is self-mastery in its purest form, the mastery of one's own inner state. They have learned to distinguish the external world from their internal one. The world can be loud, erratic, even harsh, but their inner world, that is sacred. They do not permit every outside event to determine their internal condition. This is why calm people can feel as if they inhabit a different realm, because in a way, they do. It is the gap between the trigger and their reply that defines them. That almost invisible moment where they decide whether to contribute to chaos or to peace. That moment is the signature of high emotional intelligence, because the reality is calmness is not discovered, it is constructed. Every steady person you meet is building it, moment by conscious moment. They have built it during sleepless nights when their thoughts race, on difficult mornings when they wanted to surrender, in exchanges where they chose silence over retort. It is not simple, but it is intentional. They have trained themselves to be undisturbed, not because life stopped challenging them, but because they stopped failing the same internal exams. If you ask a calm person what transformed them, they might tell you, I just became exhausted, tired of the mental loops, tired of justifying, tired of being misread, tired of granting my energy to things that were not worthy of it. So they began to treat peace as something essential. It is a curious thing. The world applauds loud achievement, but seldom values quiet fortitude. Yet it is the calm ones who often hold the deepest understanding. They are the ones who can sit in stillness long enough to truly listen to what life is expressing. They notice far more than they verbalize. They see beyond static because silence awns perception. In that silence, they witness without criticism. And that is what allows them to connect with others so profoundly. If you think about it, calm people are interpreters of emotion. They do not just hear language. They sense the meaning beneath it. They do not just observe actions. They perceive the history behind them. They do not just react to energy. They take it in, interpret it, and let it go. That is why a conversation with them can feel restorative. You feel heard, not dissected, comprehended, not criticized, because they are not listening to craft a reply. They are listening to truly understand. That quality of listening demands stillness, and stillness demands strength, because it is challenging to stay centered when others are unraveling. It is hard to stay soft when the world seems intent on hardening you. But calm people do it regardless, not because it is easy, but because they know it is essential. They have realized that peace is not the lack of challenges. It is the ability to handle challenges without losing your core. And that is what distinguishes them. Most people search for peace in ideal situations. Calm people generate peace within imperfect ones. They do not wait for the storm to end. They learn to locate the stillness at its center. You will often find them with simple, grounding routines because simplicity steadies the mind. A morning practice, a silent stroll, a warm drink, a few moments of quiet before bed. These small rituals are not accidental. They are mooring points. Psychologically, repetition constructs a sense of order and predictability. And calm people guard these patterns because they keep them rooted. They know that without regular moments of quiet, the mind begins to spin tales. And the calmer the mind, the clearer the narrative becomes. There is also a beautiful paradox about them. Calm people are often among the most feeling souls. Yet, they are the least impulsive because they have learned that expression does not always demand an explosion. Sometimes you honor an emotion by holding it softly until it transforms. This does not mean they lack intensity. They simply channel it differently. Their sorrow becomes contemplation. Their irritation becomes clear-mindedness.
their worry becomes trust. This alchemy, the skill of turning raw emotion into conscious awareness, is the heart of steadiness. It is what separates emotional maturity from emotional turmoil. But here is an even deeper layer. Calmness does not only change how you feel, it changes how people interact with you. When you remain steady, you become more difficult to manipulate. You become an enigma to those who feed on emotional replies. And that, in turn, safeguards your energy, because nothing baffles chaos more than someone who refuses to join it. It is a silent rebellion. When everyone else is rushing to respond, the calm person holds back. And in that holding back, they gain an insight others miss. They perceive intentions, recurring themes, and dynamics that only become visible in stillness. They do not rush to judgment because they have learned that truth typically reveals itself. It does not need to be forced. This is why calm people rarely look back on their choices with regret. They allow life sufficient time to show them what is real. And perhaps that is the most profound aspect. Calm people do not just handle emotion. They honor time. They understand that time unveils what emotion conceals. That patience is not an action. It is insight disguised as waiting. So while others pursue quick fixes, calm people let situations develop. Because they know that forcing understanding is the surest path to misunderstanding. If you ask them how they remain so steady, they might smile and say something like, "I just stopped wrestling with reality." But what they truly mean is they stopped wrestling with life itself. They stopped trying to win every discussion, dominate every result, rewrite every past event, and forecast every future one. They started trusting themselves enough to let events unfold. Trust. That is the hidden element in calmness. It is not about knowing what will occur. It is about believing that no matter what occurs, you will find a way through it. And that belief does not stem from arrogance. It comes from experience, from having weathered enough difficulties to know you will weather the next one as well. This is why calm people often emit a quiet confidence. Not a loud, flashy confidence, but the kind that feels foundational. It is not in their statements, it is in their aura. You simply feel safer around them because their energy communicates that it is alright. We do not need to hurry. We do not need to struggle. We can simply exist. And maybe that is what the world needs more of. People who do not add to the cacophony. People who can pause before acting, breathe before talking, and listen before forming opinions. Imagine if everyone practiced that for just one day. The world would become significantly quieter. And maybe, just maybe, that quiet would mean more than words ever could. But let's be honest, maintaining calm is not simple. Even the steadiest people sometimes falter. Sometimes they feel rage, they collapse, they experience uncertainty. But the key difference is they know the route back to stillness. They do not remain adrift in the emotion. They witness it, accept its presence, and allow it to move on. That is the cycle. Awareness, acceptance, release. Because genuine calm is not about never being disturbed. It is about always rediscovering your center. The calm ones know that emotions are like currents, not permanent structures. You cannot prevent them from arriving, but you can choose how you move with them. So they navigate the highs and lows of existence with a certain grace, never allowing a single moment to define the whole of their experience. They have learned that both joy and sorrow are temporary guests, each welcome, each passing. And in that acceptance, they locate a peace that is not dependent on external events. This is why calm people often seem timeless, as if they have stepped away from the race everyone else is running. Because in a sense, they have. They are not pursuing peace anymore. They have embodied it. And perhaps you have felt that pull too. That inner voice that says, "I just want to be at peace." Maybe you have reached the stage where chaos no longer appeals to you, where quiet feels like refuge and where you prefer to understand rather than confront. That is not a deficit. That is evolution. Because calmness is not an innate trait. It is a state you grow towards. And once you do, your perception of the world shifts. You no longer require noise to feel vibrant. You begin to cherish quiet instances, gentle connections, more measured days. You start to define success not by your accumulation of achievements, but by the tranquility with which you lie. And the best part is, the calmer you become, the more you perceive people, cycles, meaning. You start to recognize how much of life is just distraction pretending to be significant. And once you see that, you cannot unsee it.
So you begin to simplify. You clear out your thoughts, your environment, your connections. You choose less, and paradoxically, it feels like more. Because calm people understand that the aim is not a flawless life. It is a tranquil mind. And peace does not come from correcting everything outside of you. It comes from learning to rest inside yourself, even when nothing outside makes any sense. That is what makes calm people extraordinary. Not their absence of emotion, but their profound relationship with it. They do not escape the quake. They become the stability within it. They do not control the gale. They learn to adjust their sails. They do not fear the unknown. They see it as part of the journey, and maybe that is the lesson we all need. That calmness is not found at the destination. It is found when you stop running and decide to be fully present, right here, right now. Because life will always test your limits. It will unsettle you, challenge your foundations, and break your rhythm. But every time it does, you have a decision to react impulsively or to return to your center. And every single time you choose to return to calm, you grow a little stronger, a little wiser, a little more free. So if you have ever been told you are too calm, receive it as the highest praise. It means you have learned the delicate art of emotional balance in a world that feeds on reaction. It means you have learned to observe the chaos without becoming the chaos itself. And it means you have discovered a form of strength that does not need to roar. It simply endures. Because calmness is not a void, it is a profound presence without the noise. It is influence without force. It is feeling without disorder.